May 4th, 1906, Volume 7, Fears and Tears of the Soul. Jesus asks her to be more precise in writing. I was very afflicted for not having seen my adorable Jesus clearly, with the addition that my thought was telling me that Jesus, who is my life, did not love me any more. Oh God, what mortal pains my poor heart felt! I did not know what to do to free myself from this. I shed bitter tears, and to free myself I said, "He does not love me any more, and out of spite that he does not love me any more, I will love him more than before." I wrote this to obey. Then after much hardship, he came, bearing my tears on his face. I did not understand well why, but it seemed to me that since that thought had excited me and almost irritated me into loving him more, pleased with it, he would almost say to me, "What? I do not love you? I love you so much that I keep an account even of your tears, and I bear them on my face for my pleasure." Then afterwards he added, "My daughter, I want you to be more precise, more exact, and to manifest everything in writing, because you skip many things, even though you take them for yourself without writing them. But many things will serve others." On hearing this, I remained confused, because in truth I do this, and my repugnance to write is so great that only the miracles that obedience can do could conquer me, since of my own will I would not be good at writing a single comma. May everything be for the glory of God and to my confusion. May 4th, 1919, Volume 12. Jesus has his throne on earth in one who lives in his will. I live in the midst of privations and bitternesses. My only strength and life is the will of my Jesus. My sweet Jesus made himself seen in my interior for a little while, all afflicted and pensive, sustaining his forehead with his own hand. In seeing him so afflicted, I said to him, "Jesus, what is wrong? Why so afflicted and pensive?" And he, looking at me, told me, "Ah, daughter, I am dividing the lots of the world from within your heart. Your heart is the center of my throne upon earth. And from my center I look at the world, the madness of creatures, the precipice which they are preparing, while I am put aside as if I did not mean anything to them. So I am forced to withdraw the light, not only of grace, but also of natural reason itself, so as to confuse them, and let them touch with their own hands what man is, and what man can do. And from within your heart I look at him, and I cry, and I pray for the ungrateful man. I want you together with me, crying, praying, and suffering for my relief and company. And I, my poor Jesus, how much compassion I feel for you. Yes, I will cry and pray together with you. But tell me, my love, how is it possible that my heart be the center of your throne upon earth, while there are so many good souls in whom you dwell, and I am so bad?" And he added, "In heaven, too, I have the center of my throne, though I am the life of each blessed. And by being the life of each blessed, I do not exclude the fact that I have a throne in which all of my majesty, my omnipotence, immensity, beauty, wisdom, and so forth, dwell as though at the central point, since each blessed cannot contain them, not having the capacity of containing all the immensity of my being. In the same way I have my center upon earth, though I also dwell in others. I do have my central point from which I decide, I command, I operate, I do good, I chastise, which I do not do in my other dwellings. And do you know why I have chosen you as the central place? Because I have chosen you to live in my will, and one who lives in my will is capable of containing me completely, as my central point, because she lives in the center of my being, and I live in the center of hers. But while I live in her center, I live as though I were in my own center. On the other hand, one who does not live in my will cannot embrace me completely. Therefore, at the most, I can reside there, but not raise my throne. Ah, if everyone understood the great good of living in my will, they would compete. But alas, how few of them understand this and live more in themselves than in me. May 4th, 1925, Volume 17, continuation of the previous chapter, which is May 1st, 1925. The mission of the divine will reproduces on earth the image of the most holy Trinity. After writing what is written above, I began to do the adoration to my crucified Jesus, fusing all of myself in his most holy will. And my beloved Jesus came out from within my interior, and placing his most holy will close to mine, all tenderness, told me, "My daughter, did you write everything on the mission of my will?" And I, yes, I wrote everything." And he again, "What if I told you that you did not write everything? Rather, you have left out the most essential thing. So continue to write, and add, 'The mission of my will conceal the most holy Trinity upon earth. Just as in heaven there are the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, inseparable but distinct among themselves, who form all the beatitude of heaven. In the same way, on earth, there will be three persons who, because of their missions, will be distinct and inseparable among themselves. The Virgin, with her maternity, which conceals the paternity of the Celestial Father and encloses his power in order to fulfill her mission of Mother of the Eternal Word and co-redemptrix of mankind. My humanity, for the mission of Redeemer, which was enclosed in the divinity of the Word, without ever separating from the Father and from the Holy Spirit, in order to manifest my celestial wisdom, adding the bond of becoming inseparable from my Mamma. And you, for the mission of my will, as the Holy Spirit will display his love in you, manifesting to you his secrets, the prodigies of my will, the goods it contains, in order to make happy those who will give themselves to knowing how much good this supreme will contains, to love it, and to let it reign in their midst, offering their souls to let it dwell within their hearts, that it may be able to form its life in them. And the bond of inseparability will be added between you, the Mother, and the Eternal Word. These three missions are distinct and inseparable. The first two have prepared the graces, the light, the work, and everything, with unheard of pains, for the third mission of my will, in order to be all fused in it, without leaving their office, so as to find rest, because my will alone is celestial rest. These two missions will be repeated. because their exuberance of grace, of light, of knowledge is so great that all human generations can be filled with them. Even more, they will not be able to contain all the goods which they contain. These two missions are symbolized by the sun, since in creating it, I filled it with so much light and heat that all human generations can enjoy it in superabundance. Nor did I take into account that, since in the beginning of creation there were only Adam and Eve on earth, I could have placed in the sun enough light as to be sufficient only for the two of them, making it then grow in proportion to the growth of the human generations. No, no, I made the sun full of light just as it is now, and will be. For the decorum and the honor of our power, wisdom, and love, our works are always made with the fullness of all the good which they contain, nor are they subject to increase or decrease. So I did with the sun. I centralized in it all the light which it was to serve up to the last man. But how much good does the sun not do to the earth? What glory does it not give to its Creator with its mute light? I can say that, for the immense good it does to the earth, with its mute language, the sun glorifies me and makes me known more than all other things together. And this because it is full in its light and stable in its course. When I looked at the sun, which, with so much light, only Adam and Eve could enjoy, I also looked at all the living, and in seeing that that light was to serve all, my paternal goodness exulted with joy, and I remained glorified in my works. So I did with my dear mamma. I filled her with so much grace that she can give graces to all without ever exhausting even one of them. So I did with my humanity. There is no good which it did not possess, and the very divinity, to be able to give it to whomever wants it. So I did with you. I enclosed in you my will, and with it I enclosed myself. I enclosed in you its knowledges, its secrets, its light. I filled your soul up to the brim, so much so that what you write is nothing other than the outpouring of what you contain of my will. And even though it now serves you alone, and a few glimmers of light serve some other souls, I am content, because being light, it will make its way by itself, more than a second sun, in order to illuminate the human generations and to bring about the fulfillment of our works, that our will be known and loved, and that it reign as life within the creatures. This was the purpose of creation. This was its beginning. This will be its means and end. Therefore be attentive, because this is about rescuing that eternal will which, with so much love, wants to dwell in the creatures. But it wants to be known. It does not want to be like a stranger. Rather, it wants to give out its goods and become life of each one. But it wants its rights whole, its place of honor. It wants the human will to be banished, the only enemy for it and for man. The mission of my will was the purpose of the creation of man. My divinity did not depart from heaven, from its throne. My will, instead, not only departed, but descended into all created things and formed its life in them. However, while all things recognized me, and I dwell in them with majesty and decorum, man alone drove me away. But I want to conquer him and win him, and this is why my mission is not finished. So I called you, entrusting to you my own mission, that you, may place the one who drove me away on the lap of my will, and everything may return to me in my will. Therefore do not be surprised at the great and marvelous things I may tell you for the sake of this mission, or at the many graces I may give you, because this is not about making a saint, but about saving the generations. This is about rescuing a divine will, for which everything must return to the beginning, to the origin from which everything came, so that the purpose of my will may have its complete fulfillment. May 4th, 1927, Volume 21, How the Soul Who Does the Divine Will is Always Heaven's, and How the Divine Will is Never Exhausted. The privations of my sweet Jesus torment me, debilitate me, and I feel my poor soul as though exposed to the rays of a burning sun, the divine will, that obfuscate and almost blacken me. But even though I feel myself charring, I am forced by a supreme force to remain fixed in these rays of the sun of the divine Fiat, without being able to move, without he who, watering me, would render these rays less burning, and would make a few blades of grass sprout within my bleeding heart. How ill I feel. Without Jesus, everything is changed in me. The divine will alone is left to me, my only inheritance, that cannot be taken away from me by anyone, not even by Jesus. It alone is my life, my dwelling, my all. Everything else is over. Everyone has left me, nor do I have anyone to whom to turn, either in heaven or on earth. But while I was pouring out my sorrow, my beloved good, he who gives me death and gives me life, who renders my poor existence unhappy and makes me happy, moved in my interior, telling me, "My daughter, the heavens are always heavens. They never change, nor do they move. And even though sometimes the clouds obfuscate them, spread out and cover the beautiful azure of the heavens, however, the clouds cannot touch them. They spread out at such a low level of the air that there is a great distance between the heavens and the clouds. So the heavens never lose their beauty, the ornament of the stars, or their azure color because of the clouds. They are untouchable by anything. If they undergo any change at all, it is the low earth. It is the human eye that, instead of seeing heavens, sees clouds and obscured air. Such is the soul who does my will. She is more than heavens. My will extends within the soul as more than azure heavens studded with stars, and it remains in its place, firm and unshakable, reigning and dominating everything with such majesty as to render even the littlest acts of the creature, by virtue of its light, as more than most refulgent stars and sun. So the pains, the privations of me, are like clouds formed at the low level of the human nature that seem to obscure it. But the heaven of my will remains untouchable, and its sun that shines in it shoots its ardent rays more strongly, so much so that you feel as though obfuscated. However, it is all superficial and at the low level of your human nature. But in your soul, the heaven of the divine Fiat undergoes no mutation. Who can ever touch my will? No one. It is immovable and unshakable, and wherever it reigns, it forms its dwelling of light, of peace, and of immutability. Therefore do not fear. A little breeze is enough to put to flight the clouds that invest your human nature, and to dispel the darkness that seems to occupy your soul. And I, my Jesus, how you have changed! It seems that even about your divine volition, you don't want to tell me anything anymore. And Jesus added, My daughter, my will is never exhausted, and if I do not speak to you about it, all created things will speak to you. Even the stones will turn into voice to speak to you. The heavens, the sun, the sea, in sum, all creation have much to say about my eternal volition, because since they are filled with its life, they all have something to say about the life of my will that created things possess. Therefore, a little attention that you pay to one thing you look at, or to one thing you touch, and you will hear new lessons about my will. May 4th, 1929, Volume 26. Power, Enchantment, and Empire of a Soul Who Lives in the Divine Will. How everything turns around her, and she lords over her very Creator. My abandonment in the divine fiat continues, and my poor mind pauses now in one point of it, now in another, but it is unable to go out from within the immensity of its endless boundaries. Even more, it finds neither ways nor doors to go out of it. And while I move within the divine volition, I leave it behind me, and while I leave it behind me, it presents itself before me with its majesty, to the right and to the left, and even under my steps. And it says to me, I am all for you, to give you my life and to form it in you. So there is nothing else for you but my divine and adorable will. Now, while my poor mind was wandering within it, my sweet Jesus moved in my interior and told me, My daughter, one who lives in my divine volition, feels within herself the continuous and constant act of the divine operating of my divine fiat. This continuous act, generated by its power in the creature, has such strength, such empire over all, that it captivates all with its sweet enchantment, in such a way that all turn around her, the angels, the saints, the sacrosanct Trinity, the spheres, and all creation. All want to be spectators to enjoy a scene so sweet, enchanting, and beautiful, of the continuous act of the creature in the divine fiat. She enters into the bank of the Supreme Being, and unifying herself in the continuous act of her Creator, she does nothing but put out, with her continuous act, the innumerable beauties, the sweetest sounds, the insuperable rarities of the qualities of her Creator. And what enraptures the most is to see her littleness that, all daring and courageous, without fearing anything, as if she wanted to lord over her very Creator, to give him pleasure, to captivate him to herself, to ask him for the kingdom of his will upon earth, takes and puts out from within the divine bank all our joys and happinesses, as if she wanted to exhaust them. And seeing that she does not exhaust them, she does not tire. She repeats her continuous act, in such a way that all wait for her to finish. And seeing that she does not finish, they press themselves around her, so much so that she becomes place of center, and all turn around so as not to lose a scene so consoling and never before seen. That is, the continuous act of the human littleness in the unity of the supreme fiat. More so, since the continuous operating is only of God, and as one sees it being repeated by the creature, it causes the greatest surprises and makes heaven and earth astonished. My little daughter, if you knew what a continuous act in my will means. This act is incomprehensible to created mind. The creature is the bilocator of our continuous act. She enters into our act and makes arise and puts out our rare beauty, our invincible love, our power that can do anything, our immensity that embraces everything. And showing them to all, she would like to say to all, "Look who is our Creator." And we let her do it. And we enjoy in seeing that the littleness of the creature wants to give us our paradise and our divine being as ours and as her own. What can one who lives in our fiat not do and not give to us? Anything. More so since, because this happy creature is on earth, by virtue of her free will, she possesses the conquering virtue that not even the saints in heaven possess. And with it, she can conquer and multiply whatever good she wants. And our will that keeps her within itself renders her the conqueror of our divine being. May 4th, 1931, Volume 29, Power of the Word of Jesus. How the repeated acts are like fluid for the plants. Forced pains lose freshness. Jesus wants to be free in the soul. My abandonment in the divine volition continues. Its sweet empire attracts my poor will, and even though very often it would want to, as though enter the field to make its way, given the painful circumstances I find myself in, yet the omnipotent Fiat, with the irresistible strength of its light, fixes itself upon the night of my will and prevents my step. And forming its day of light in my soul, it draws me to do my little acts in its divine volition. And I was thinking to myself, why does Jesus have so much interest that I do not neglect my repeated acts in his adorable will? And Jesus, all tenderness and goodness, told me, "My daughter, because all the acts that you do in your interior are acts taught and formed by me, so they are my acts, and I do not want you to remain behind without uniting yourself together with me in order to follow them. In fact, you must know that when I do a crafting in the soul, when I speak and teach, your Jesus has such power as to convert the good taught and operated in the creature into her nature. And good in one's nature cannot be destroyed. It would be as if you had the eye given to you by God as property of your nature, and you would not make use of it in order to look, or voice, hands, feet, and you would not make use of them in order to speak, to operate, and walk. Would you not be worthy of condemnation? Now, just as I give gifts in one's nature to the body, in the same way when I speak, my creative word has the power to give to the soul, as though in her nature, the gift that I intend to give with my word. In fact, one fiat of mine can enclose a heaven, a sun, an incessant prayer as gift, with which my fiat has the power to convert these gifts as though into the soul's nature. So what you do in your interior are gifts in your nature that my word has formed in you. Therefore you will be attentive not to keep my gifts as useless. I placed them in you so that, with these repeated acts in my will, we may together impetrate the great gift that my divine will come to reign upon earth. More so, good daughter, since the repeated acts are like fluid for the plant. If the plant has no fluid, it withers and cannot produce either flowers or fruits. The fluid is like the vital blood of the plant that, circulating in it, preserves it, makes it grow, and makes it produce the most beautiful and tasty fruits, such as to form the glory and the profit of the farmer. But this fluid does not form on its own in the plant. It is the farmer that must be attentive to water it and cultivate it. and not once, but always giving it as though in its nature sufficient fluid, so that the poor plant may find the daily nourishment in order to vegetate and grow, to be able to give its fruits to he who cultivates it. But if the farmer is slothful, the plant loses the fluid and dies. See then what the repeated acts are. They are the blood of the soul, the nourishment, the preservation and the growth of my gifts. And I, as celestial farmer, never cease watering you, so there is no danger that I might be slothful. But you must receive this vital fluid, and only then do you receive it when you repeat the acts in my will in the depth of your soul. Then you open your mouth, and I, watering you, give you the blood into your soul, so as to give you divine warmth, celestial nourishment. And adding for you more words of mine, I preserve you and I increase my gifts. Oh, if the plant had reason and refused to be watered by the farmer, what would be the lot of the poor plant? The lot of losing life. And what sorrow for the poor farmer! Therefore, to repeat the acts is to want life. It is to take the nourishment. To repeat is to love and appreciate, and satisfy the yearnings, and make your celestial farmer content, who with so much love has worked in the field of your soul. And as I hear you repeat your acts, whether together with me or on your own, you give me the fruits of my work, and I feel loved back and repaid for the many gifts I have given you, and I dispose myself to give you greater gifts. Therefore be attentive, and let your constancy be the winning strength that conquers and dominates your Jesus. After this, I felt as if I was about to fall into my usual state of suffering, and given the present impositions, I felt reluctant to accept. My poor nature trembled, and I felt like saying with my sweet Jesus, Father, if it be possible, let this chalice pass from me, yet not my will, but yours be done. And my beloved Jesus added, My daughter, I do not want in you forced pains, but voluntary, because forced pains lose the freshness, the beauty, and the sweet enchantment of the likeness of the pains of your Jesus, that were all suffered voluntarily by me. And they are like those withered flowers, like those unripe fruits, that the sight disdains to look at, and the mouth cannot swallow, so great is the insipidness and the hardness of those fruits. You must know that when I elect a soul, I form in her my residence, and in my house I want to be free to do what I want, and to be as I please. Nor do I want any restriction on the part of the creature. I want absolute freedom. Otherwise I would render myself unhappy and hampered in my way of acting. It would be the greatest misfortune, even for the poorest one, not to enjoy freedom in his little hovel. And I would incur the misfortune of a poor person who, having formed with great love a residence for himself, once he has furnished it and placed it in order, enters it in order to live in it. But to his greatest sorrow, impositions and restrictions are made upon him. He is told, In this room you cannot sleep. In this you cannot receive. Through this other one you cannot pass. In some he cannot be there as he wants, nor do what he wants. So poor one, he feels unhappy because he has lost his freedom, and he is regretful of the sacrifices he made of having built this residence. So I am. How many works, how many sacrifices, how many graces have I not poured in order to render a creature my residence? And when I take possession of it, more than anything I love and want freedom in my house, And when I find now reluctances, now restrictions, instead of the residence adapting itself to me, it is I who must adapt myself to it. Therefore I cannot carry out my life, nor my divine ways. And it is not given to me to fulfill the purpose for which, with so much love, I chose this residence. Therefore I want freedom. And if you want to make me happy, leave me free to do what I want. End of May 4th. Fiat.